I know the trend now is to comment on celebrities, and so I have a hard time resisting doing so. And I think the public is interested in what celebrities have done that are good or bad overall. And I was recently watching the documentary on Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. And honestly, after watching that, I'm going to be hard-pressed to ever watch another Woody Allen movie. Unfortunately, I watched probably 30 of his movies back in the day, and I really like them, but I really don't want to support, which seems like a pedophile to me. I mean, all the evidence seemed pretty strong toward it, especially when I looked at some of the rebuttals online. They weren't strong enough to sway me from it. But at the same time, I was looking at Mia Farrow, and Mia Farrow looks a lot younger than her age that she should be. And I was looking at some of the good and bad parts of her procedure, things that she's done. So first of all, I think she's had a relatively decent facelift and volume restoration. The cheeks are slightly over-augmented, but they're not terrible. They're a little bit off balance. Her eyes are pretty good in terms of the balance of volume restoration versus skin removal. I think that there's, when you're working with eyelids, there's this delicate balance between overcutting and overfilling. You don't want to do one or the other too much. You do a little bit of both, and it creates a nice balance. I think I see that for her. The neck is starting to sag again a little bit. She's probably had a facelift, I'm guessing, probably maybe 5 to 10 years ago, it looks like, from what I'm seeing. The biggest thing that I noticed, which is interesting in terms of unbalance, and the big thing for me about looking at work that bothers me is looking at things that are slightly unbalanced, are the lips. The lips, to me, I think she's had silicone injected. I'm sort of the king of fixing bad silicone lips. They're not terrible. The lips are slightly off. I looked at some old footage, documentary during the series, and I noticed that her lips looked a little bit too full. I also noticed that they're slightly lumpy, but not terrible. And I also noticed one thing that's very telltale sign of silicone, which is that when you close the lips and you purse them down, you see a little micro bend of the lip about 1 millimeter below the junction of the outer vermilion border. And that's hard to describe that, but silicone typically does that, where you get this little inflection point where the lip bulges out when the lips are pursed down. Juvederm, other fillers typically don't do that, but silicone does that, and I noticed that in one angle of a video. So I'm pretty confident she's had some silicone done. I'm not 100% confident because it's not that obvious. I only saw that in one angle, but based on some of the multiple series of images, I believe that or videos, I believe she's had that. Another thing that I think looks very unbalanced for her are her hands, which is very interesting, is that I'm very passionate about making the areas that are exposed, like the hands and the neck and the face, sort of balanced. And I noticed that her hands look significantly older, probably 20 to 30 years older than her face and neck. And so if she were my patient, the two things I would address before I looked at maybe doing another facelift for her, maybe slightly reducing her cheeks, I would look at fixing her lips and her hands to create total balance. If you make those slight tweaks, I always say that the key thing is to try to treat what I see, because as a surgeon, I detect a lot more fakeness than what the general population sees. However, I want to first fix what the general population may see. And the two things that stand out to me are the fact that her lips look slightly not correct, and I would do a very modest lip reduction, just take some of the bulginess off the bottom edge. And I would do a fat transfer, preferably, if not fillers, into her hands to balance her face. And maybe if she's had fillers in the cheeks, I would slightly reduce those. And then maybe do a small tuck-up lift for her to balance everything else. So hopefully this little podcast is interesting for those who are out there who have watched this documentary or planning to watch this documentary and are also interested in cosmetic enhancement and what celebrities have had done.